Hello Nippies, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, hi, hello, I'm Nips, a freelance artist, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Those of you that don't follow me on Twitter probably don't know that I am currently obsessed with Legends of Runeterra, which is Riot Games' card game. And those of you that have known me from even a while back know that I absolutely love card games, and I play them kind of semi-competitively, and I've really kind of nose-dove into Runeterra pretty heavily since like October of 2021, and I just absolutely love the game. I think it's one of the best card games I've ever played, and the art is just amazing. And you should definitely check out Six More Vodka if you have the chance, because every piece of work that they create is just a masterpiece. So what I'm doing today is an idea that I had randomly on stream. So in Legends of Runeterra, you get to play to make your decks with champions from League of Legends if you're from League of Legends. And what happens is that you can play a maximum of 6 champions, and each card you can play a maximum of 3 times. So usually in a standard deck, you'll have 2 champions and 3 copies of each. And so there are a lot of like standard kind of meta decks in the game that are just, you know, standard good decks, standard decks that everybody plays, and popular meme decks and stuff. And so I one day took it upon myself to draw 2 champions that I really liked from a deck together. And this deck is called Scouts, and it's Misfortune and Quinn. And you know, I love my gays. And so when I saw them in the deck, because I played them for a little bit, I was like, I really like this pairing. I don't think I'd ever considered them as a pairing until I started playing this deck a little bit. And I was like, wait, this is kind of cute. Like just drawing combinations of champions based on Runeterra decks. And so this, you'll see, was like a very kind of a rudimentary start to this kind of theme. And this video is really long, so you'll probably know or notice that there are going to be several of these doodles throughout this video. And this drawing is what started it all. And I'm just really excited because it's been a long time since I've been kind of in a community. Everyone in the Runeterra community has been absolutely sweet to me and welcoming, and it's been a pretty amazing time. And it's been a while since I've done this much fan art for a game that I'm into, or just like an IP that I'm into. I've had a really fun time just kind of playing the game, and a lot of my content has revolved around creating content for this game and playing this game. On that vein, no pun intended, yeah, we're doing a bunch of these doodles today in the same video. And one of the things I have to say is that a lot of the drawings, if not a lot, like literally all of the drawings, do not take into consideration any sort of lore. And I've run into lore problems and conflicts and contradictions in some of these drawings. And so I typically just ignore them, because like I don't know all of League's lore, Riot's lore. And so the only thing that I take into consideration when I make these drawings is the deck combinations of the decks. That's it. So I would say there's Quinn and Valor in the back. Yeah, so I would say that if you know anything about Riot's lore or anything, it's a little disclaimer that I do not take any of that into consideration. So these are just fun doodles based on the decks and the decks alone. So we have Quinn and MF, which was the first one. And then this next one is going to be Senna and Veigar, which is a deck called Darkness. And then we have Lee Sin and Zoe, which is another very popular deck. It's like a staple tournament deck. and then Darkness, which had its era last season or the season before. I don't know how many at this point. But yeah, these are two very popular decks, and the way that I liked to theme it in my mind was that it was two parents with their chaotic children. And it's funny because the two chaotic children on top, Zoe and Veigar, are essentially the ones kind of carrying the decks. Well, maybe not Lee Sin, but because Lee Sin also is like a huge part of the deck, if not like the main combo piece of the deck. But either way, like Zoe carries pretty heavily in that deck. So the two being carried are the ones also doing the carrying. And I just think it's super cute. She's like kicking, she's like trying to be like him. She's holding like, you know, his hair on top of her head, you know, trying to imitate him. And then Veigar, you know, is like trying to be intense as he usually is, trying to be scary, but he's like super short and cute. And Senna's just like, I know, Lee. And Lee's like, what is going on? Please stop. Cease all activity. Stop. Inaction, you know? So, yeah, I thought this picture was incredibly cute. I'm super proud of how it came out. And a lot of these drawings, you'll see that I start on Clip Studio Paint and then I finish on Photoshop. And the reason that I do that is that there is like a specific brush, you'll see it on the top left, the India ink Bit Husky. It's probably one of my favorite brushes in any digital program to ink with. It's just it's what I use to ink my entire comic. And it's just really comfortable, really light, really fun. I love everything about it. I have to find a way to import that into Photoshop because if I do, it's over. So yeah, I absolutely love that brush. And sometimes I just find it much easier to sketch things out in Clip Studio than I do in Photoshop. So you'll see me start here and then end up in Photoshop. And another thing is that you'll see that this drawing is much more refined than the first one. And like I said, the first one was just kind of something that spawned just like randomly, like kind of out of nowhere, like in the moment. And then I kind of turned it into a thing. So I do currently actually have a document of deck doodles, like Runeterra deck doodles, and list of decks and champion combinations that I want to at some point maybe draw out. And right now, I have done quite a bit of them. So in this video, there are about, there's 2 in this drawing if you want to count them separately. Then there's the one before, and I think there's another one, maybe 2 more after this. Oh God, I don't know how many. I don't know how many I put in this video, but there will be another video with some more deck doodle combinations. And the reason that I chose to put them together is because it's too many to separate. And so I don't think you guys want to watch 800 speed paints all separated with, it's too much. So I figured that I would do it kind of like I do Thirsty Thursdays. If you guys remember those dead days, I promise one day they'll come back. I promise one day they'll come back. But yeah, so kind of like that, where I just kind of lump them all together and then add timestamps, so that way you guys can flip through whatever you guys want to see, and hopefully that'll be good for you. So you'll see me here on the left, top left. I started with some deck ideas. We had Tariq Pantheon and Ezreal Draven, and some of the Ashe LeBlanc, and some of the deck ideas that I've been getting, they're not always like current meta reliant. So some of these decks are not like in the meta, so to speak, but they have been meta or were like a meme at some point. And it's just like known combinations. So hopefully you'll see like a combination of that with the future deck doodles. And so we're reaching kind of towards the end of the lines. So with these drawings, a lot of the times, like, I feel like I've said this multiple times, but you know, like, you sometimes just get carried away You try your best to say, I'm gonna keep this quick, I'm gonna keep this fast, you know, hashtag just a sketch, and then you kind of get carried away. And a lot of the times, like, in general, I tend to draw pretty zoomed out. I don't know if you guys have noticed or it's bothered you, but I know some people have told me, they're like, I just don't understand how you do that. And some people are just like, please zoom in, please zoom in. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I need to draw zoomed out. But here specifically, a lot of the times, like, if I'm doing something like this where like I want it to be very fast, I force myself to stay zoomed out, because sometimes, like, if I go any closer than this, like I really start like adding details where there don't need to be any. And sometimes I'll like zoom in anyway for things like the face, because usually for me the faces need to be on point. Everything else can take a fat steamy poop, but the faces, I think, are the most important part to me, so everything else is fine. But otherwise, like, I tend to stay pretty zoomed out. So I feel like maybe these speed paints are not the most informative, but yeah, so it does seem it looks a little tedious, because I'm not really like going into any details. You're just essentially watching me draw this like zoomed out the entire time. But you know, quality content. I will say that jokes aside, I am pretty proud of how quickly I managed to do a lot of these, considering how many characters are in this one specifically. I think this one did it take me like 4 hours, I think? 3 to 5 hours, I want to say. I don't actually remember. I don't remember the actual time. But yeah, I do think it was pretty quick, all things considered, especially on stream. I usually take longer on stream because we're hanging out, we're having a good time, I'm getting distracted as I usually do. But I'm really proud of how quickly I was able to do this, and just like the quality of the lines, like they're still like really messy, but they look decent enough that's like a sketch, you know? So I was pretty proud that I didn't overdo it. I didn't feel like I have to overdo it, and it still looked really decent. Finally done with the lines, adding flats, and kind of getting the picture to a more finished state. This drawing ends up being basically what starts it all, and I'm just so like floored by how many people really liked this drawing. And somebody was super nice and put this drawing and some of the other ones on Reddit, I think it was the Runeterra Reddit, and everybody really loved it, and it was just very cute. Everybody was so wholesome about it, and I didn't think that I really liked the drawing a lot, but Runeterra tends to be pretty niche. We have a pretty small community. Riot doesn't really promote our stuff like that well at all, so a lot of people don't even know we exist. But so many people were so cute about this, and they really loved it. So I was very floored by the reaction. And yeah. So yeah, we're reaching the end of this doodle, and I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but you're like, okay, you do a doodle, you do a sketch, and then you're like, okay, I'm only gonna do flat colors. It's fine, no shading, nothing. And then you put your flat colors and you start adding gradients, and you're like, okay, it's just gradients. It's gonna be fine. It's just to make it like look slightly more alive. No problem, nothing wild. And then you start adding like slight shadows like here and there. You're like, it's just to add a little bit of volume, you know? It's fine. I'm not gonna add any more details to this. Like I'm not gonna do anything else. And then you start adding little highlights here and there, and then you just kind of get carried away. So I kind of do that in this one, but thankfully I actually do manage to keep it relatively, I try to keep myself under control. I'm pretty proud of how much I actually do exactly what I'm thinking, which is just a little bit. I do indeed add only just a little bit, and it does kind of add like the finishing touches really well while still maintaining it kind of sketch level and still kind of keeping it, making the drawing kind of pop. So I am pretty happy about that. I really do just love this drawing a lot. So okay, so this next one is a deck called, well, it doesn't really have a name, but it's a deck combination with Ashe and LeBlanc. And if you don't know anything about LeBlanc, she just like, I don't really know like her lore. It's just that she makes clones of herself and she can like become other people as well. And Ashe LeBlanc is not like a super meta deck, at least not at the time. And I really wanted to make some kind of like thirsty drawings of some of these deck combinations, of course, like where appropriate. And I don't know, Ashe and LeBlanc are both, you know, very hot women. And so I was like, okay, let's make it kind of thirsty. Let's make a thirsty drawing. And so because of like the clone thing, I was like, okay, let's make it so that like Ashe is in the middle and then we have LeBlanc and then her clone. And even in the game, like the game lets you make a clone or a copy of one of your cards, and it makes it so like it goes away at the end of the turn, so it's ephemeral. And so it's really cool that Legends of Runeterra kind of imports all of the champions and their abilities and their ults and a lot of their lore, or the ones that I do know of, and kind of turns it into like a card game type of mechanic. So if you're from League of Legends, you probably know what I'm saying, because you know that in League of Legends, you know that LeBlanc has her clones or whatever while you're playing her. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to implement that here. And I wanted to make the clone and LeBlanc look different, even though the point is that they look identical and that you can't tell them apart. But you know, artistic liberties. This drawing actually ends up being quite challenging because the angles at which I chose to draw them and the proximity with which they're all like in makes the bottom half of the picture very confusing. And you'll probably see this like as the drawing goes on. I pretty much like choose to kind of not give up, because a lot of the times like I tend to focus, like hyper focus on the one thing that I want the drawing to kind of accentuate, and then I ignore the logic of everything else. So in this drawing, what I really cared about was Ashe's face with LeBlanc's faces next to hers. And I was like, well, I don't care if anything else makes sense. And so, you know, sometimes you regret that later, and then you draw yourself into a corner, and then you're like, well, now future Nips has to deal with this, and this is not fun. And so you'll see that like I'm really just honing in on that top half of the drawing. And then once I get to the bottom half, I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And so what happened was that the body, the angle at which their faces are at, indicates something about the angle that their bodies should be at. And I had some trouble like delivering and doing like kind of essentially fixing the drawing like retroactively, because I had already drawn myself into a corner. And I think sometimes what's fun about sketches, or what's just fun about art in general, is that you can pretty much do whatever. That's the point, at least for me, is that you're not really bound by the laws of reality. And I like, at least drawing for me, is I like getting close enough to reality that the characters that I'm drawing feel tangible and like they feel real. But I also like bending reality to a point where like they still feel real and it still feels believable. Like I can get my audience to believe that it's real. but also bending it in a way that it doesn't matter. Like if it's real or not, it just looks nice regardless. So like, for example, like if you were to finish like all of their bodies here, like they just like don't necessarily make sense. Like you have Ashe's chest like on top, like you just have her like boob like on top of the other LeBlanc's body, but like we're just completely ignoring her shoulder and her arm. And then the left one is just like existing in a plane like through Ashe's body. We're just like not even acknowledging the left side of Ashe's body here. And so like a lot of these things like I just chose to ignore, just because one, for the complexity of the drawing, and two, like I showed what I wanted to show. Doesn't matter. I don't care. It's not about that. And I don't know. I know that sometimes like some people who consume art might find that kind of annoying, where they'll look at it and be like, well, where is the other part of Ashe's body? And I'll be like, well, it's not. So that's how it is here. I'm sorry. It's just not there. I don't care. That's not what the point of the drawing was. It's a quick sketch. I just don't care. That the top part was the point, and that's why we're here. And so I don't know. I kind of love that. I don't want to say that it's like entirely lazy, because it's not, but also it is. It's like, well, I could go back in and fix it and find a way to like, but that wasn't really the point, you know. It's supposed to be something fast, you know, and sometimes you can just ignore these things if you're doing, like, I don't know. I feel like there's so much pressure sometimes to do the correct thing, the quote unquote correct thing, that sometimes we forget, like, you can just do whatever the hell you want. Like, it's art. I don't care. I don't feel like drawing any of that. I'm cutting it out. Like, who cares? It looks good if you squint, and that's it. That's the end of that. It's done. So then here you'll notice one of the like problems is of doing exactly what I just said, is that I drew myself into a corner because the top is what I focused on. The bottom makes no sense. And so what happens, and I'm one of these drawers where like I draw point A, point B, and then I draw what's in between, because it's easier to draw the two ends of what you want and then fill in the middle. Like, because sometimes like if you draw point A and then you draw your path to point B, then sometimes point B doesn't come out exactly the way you want it to. And I do this a lot for foreshortening. Maybe if I ever make a tutorial of how I do foreshortening and stuff, or dynamic drawings, then I'll explain it more in depth. But that's exactly how I just do all my drawings. I have point A, point B, and then I fill in the between. So what happened here was like I did point A and point B. Point A makes sense. Point B does not make sense. So point in between the points is going to be some weird version of it makes sense, but it doesn't. So you'll see me like do the like body box sketch of Ashe and try to like slightly retroactively like fix it, not so it makes entire sense. So you'll see how like technically it doesn't, like I was saying before, like we're ignoring all of the left side of Ashe's body completely. We're essentially ignoring her shoulder as well. Like the LeBlanc clone is like over her shoulder and her arm. Like we're just kind of completely ignoring that as well. But the placement of her breast and her clavicle and her neck, due to a certain degree, makes sense. So we're kind of doing like this in between where like if your brain had to fill in the rest of Ashe's body, like mentally, like on top of the LeBlancs, like her body would make sense, if that makes any sense. So my brain did a bunch of mental math in order to get this drawing to work. So, but it was really fun. Like sometimes you do that sort of thing, and I'm kind of proud that even though yes, a lot of it doesn't make sense, if you just look at it, like your eyes kind of just drawn to the top part of the drawing, the one singular breast at the bottom part of the drawing, I think it still looks really nice, and I'm still really proud of this drawing. Definitely could be better in a lot of cases, but otherwise I really like how this came out, so pretty proud of it. And I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I know it's super long. I am so sorry. I also ramble a lot, so I apologize if this video was just not to your liking. I do have one more video coming with a couple more deck doodles, so hopefully you look forward to that. I'm sorry that I have not been creating that many videos as of late. We, like I said, finally have a new editor, and we have a new artist working on my comic, off-sell 18+, by the way, so monitor yourselves if you're gonna go check it out. I'm gonna put all the links down below. That's what I've been busy with, so hopefully if you guys want to check that out, you can look at it down below. And then the artist that I'm working with is Justin O. So their art is incredibly amazing, so please go check them out as well. I'll put their link down below. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll put all the finished products down below. If you guys enjoyed, let me know. Comment what you thought. Like the video if you liked it. Join the Nibby family. The more the merrier. And I will see you guys next video. Bye.